years ago, after Aisling Murphy's tragic murder, Helen McEntee promised that we would, in this country, meet the demands of the Istanbul Convention, but we've fallen way short. No extra refuge spaces have been provided. And last year there were 12 femicides in this country. And women who are killed are known to their partners. They're not killed by refugees or men who are unvetted or strange and come into this country. We have a real endemic problem with femicide and domestic violence in Ireland, and this government are not dealing with it. This is all our candidates, or some of our candidates, in the local elections. I'll be running in the European elections, and we're here to highlight that as being one of the key issues that we'll be campaigning on.
Why not Bríde?
Because Bríde was a woman, like myself, a woman of distinction and courage in promoting women's rights. She really did stand out in her historical context as somebody who stood up for women and promoted their rights, and we want to continue that tradition and mark this day. We did it last year here. We want to continue that tradition and mark this day as a day to fight for an end to femicide and domestic violence in this country. It's really at serious proportions. But most importantly, we need to put demands on the government to give us the resources, the refuge spaces, the right to homes that are being denied by the government to women who suffer under this terrible persecution.
Talk to us a bit about refuge spaces and why they're important for women's safety and possibly their children too.
Do you want to talk to other people with these questions, or would I take them on?
Does anyone else want to take that question?
Well, I think it's very clear, even if you're looking at the housing crisis that we have at the moment, you're forcing people to stay in either overcrowded or unsafe situations, and you see more and more of that coming to us in our clinics, and we're raising these concerns with Dublin City Council. Last year I had a motion passed in Dublin City Council to implement a domestic violence liaison officer. Now that hasn't been implemented because they don't see it as a key position that needs to be enforced, and that's why I think whatever positions that are in, whether it's on the council, in the Dáil, in Europe, or even in our communities, we need to be raising these concerns. That's why we're here today, to hopefully make this an annual thing go forward.
Are we in a better position in Dublin than perhaps some other parts of the country where refuge spaces are concerned?
I don't think so, because I think if you look at the figures, there's only 181 refuge spaces, and internationally the figures are saying we should have 500 to 700 spaces. So I don't think we can take it in a county context. I think we have to take it in a national context, and it's not enough what we're doing. And the timeline that the Justice Minister has given for implementing the zero tolerance, it's not quick enough. It's not moving quick enough at all.
We could have an election late this year, early next year. Is that enough time to do what the Minister is committed to doing?
Unfortunately not. I think everything's been put on a pause because of the unique stance that we're in this year with the amount of elections, and it should have been done as an immediate effect, and unfortunately it's not something that could be paused. And it'd be great to see all the candidates running forward in all parties and all spectrums, that they could push the issues that are saying that we need within the country for domestic violence services.
Yes,
yeah, just I think we found out during the pandemic that there was a pandemic within a pandemic of women that were kept in the home, that were reaching out, that wanted to leave, and they had nowhere to go. I'm running in Tallaght, and in Tallaght we have Saoirse's Women's Refuge, but they always have to turn people away because there aren't enough spaces. You mentioned before that maybe we're lucky here in Dublin. I think maybe you're alluding to the fact that there are 9 counties that don't have a refuge at all, and so women have to travel if they want to leave. Imagine if you have children, young children, so you can see it's a very difficult situation. I think everybody is pointing out it's very urgent that we see the funding come through immediately.
And one of those counties is Dún Laoghaire, so at least as a councillor there, maybe she...
Yeah, in Dún Laoghaire we don't have not one women's refuge in the county. I've been a councillor there for 14 years, and we've been campaigning all that time. Finally we're going to get one, but it only has half the number of spaces that is needed in the county. And there are 2 other issues. The rents crisis is a real crisis for people, for women who are in a desperate situation, because obviously we need the women's refuge spaces, but we also want women to be able to move out, go to a new place, get a place to rent, but there is nowhere to rent. The other issue is that there's a limit to the amount of time you can stay in a refuge. So at 6 months, I've had the experience of a number of people who at 6 months have been evicted from a refuge into homeless services. So this is just absolutely disgraceful. And even if we were to get what Helen McEntee is promising, we wouldn't even have half the number of spaces that the Istanbul Convention recommends.
So what have people in Dunleary Rathdown who need to access a refuge been doing for the last couple of years? Have they had to move to the city? Have they had to move to Wicklow?
And to Bray, yeah, to the city and to Bray. But Bray is absolutely has a waiting list. You can't have a waiting list for women's refuge because when people need refuge, they need it now. So it's into town or it's into homeless services, which is not a place to go when you're fleeing abuse.
Madeline, do you want to talk about homeless services and renting?
Yeah, I mean, the rental prices is just absolutely appalling, and particularly for women, because it means that women are stuck in overcrowded conditions, in dangerous places, and they just simply cannot leave because there is no housing and there's nowhere for them to go. The refuges are full, and as Melissa said, in South Dublin it's a very same situation where women are told they can only stay there for 6 months and then they have to leave. But where are they supposed to go when there's literally nowhere for people to go except into emergency accommodation, which is now filling up in Dublin as well, and there's not emergency accommodation for people either anymore. This is just absolutely disgraceful, and it's because of government's consistent terrible housing policy that has led us to this absolute dire housing crisis that is affecting women in many cases more so than others who are in really vulnerable positions.
So, do you want to talk to Rola? She's just come up from Middleton. She's a Palestinian woman. She's going to be running for us in Middleton and East Cork. She's just arrived. Okay.